That is fantastic. It worked out. All right. Well, hello. This is very exciting. Thank you for putting up with our pre-show tech check there. I am KatmanU Darrow, psychic empath, psychic wrangler. And before we see who I've wrangled into today's show, I want to let you know that this is Third Eye Salon, excuse me, where in each and every show, we take a fresh look between the veils of reality. And in today's show, we are looking between the veils of oneness and how our guest experienced oneness during her NDE, as well as her work now, which includes contact from ETs, Devic realms, mermaids, elementals, and even the gods of Olympus, which we'll get to later on in the show. But first, let's say hello to my longtime friend, psychic, conscious business coach, and our co-hostess with the mostest, Linda Coulter-Burge. Linda, how are you?
I'm very good. I'm very well. And I'm really excited about having another couple hours with everyone. See how I push that to a couple hours? I'll be your live stream chat host. And as always, my policy is play nice or get out. We want to have a good, wonderful conversation and not arguments in our chat. So I'll give you one warning and then out. Let's see, what else? Make sure you check the links down below for more information on Paulina, because we've got great information for her. And you're going to want to by the time this show is over. And thank you, everyone, for the donations that you've given us, the coffees you've purchased for us, because that helps us make this show even better. We also want to make sure that you join our Facebook group if you haven't, and that you also follow the Facebook events, both under Third Eye Salon, so that you're notified when we have shows and when there are different times like tonight's. So with that, I want to make sure that we give a wonderful applause and round of gratitude for Paulina joining us. Thank you, Paulina.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and have a conversation with all of you.
Yeah, it's a delight. I stole her off Jeff Mara. I saw her and was like, oh my God, this is extensive. So, yep, I'm so glad we got to bring her in. And before we get to know Paulina more, let's also say hello to our co-host, the Awakener, teacher to the New Earth teachers, the Mer Girl of the Galaxy, Michelle Ambergee. How are you, Michelle?
I'm good. Hi, everybody. So happy to be here. I thought it was at 3 o'clock my time, so I've been ready for hours. I'm like, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. Just to let everybody know, I am Michelle Ambergee. I'm a psychic intuitive, a medium, energy healer. I'm a high frequency light language facilitator. I also study Galactic science, which is right along lines with all the amazing stuff that Paulina talks about just the vastness of who we are and where we are. And so I'm super excited, Paulina, to get to chat with you and hear you talk. I've been kind of stalking you. So, woohoo! So I'm happy to be here. Hello, everybody.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And then finally, it is our newest co-host. She is an artist, a motorcycle mechanic. Apparently she can build motorcycles, whatever, that's easy. Software engineer, and also channeler of oneness. For the very first time, please meet Angela Anderson. Hey, Angela, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys? It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to join you guys here today. Yeah, I build motorcycles. I can do basically anything I have a desire to do. At least that's my approach to it. So motorcycles is just one of the many things that came out of that. So I'm excited to join. I've checked out a couple of videos on Paulina, and I'm so excited to hear your story, because there are aspects of your story that really resonate with me and my journey. So I'm excited to get into it today. So
perfect. Thank you so much, Angela. And we are going to do in December, we're going to have a full show on Angela, so you guys get to meet her in a more extensive way in her journey into channeling oneness. So stay tuned for that. But let's get into Miss Paulina's bio so that we can get into this conversation, because I know we're all chomping at the bit. So As a child and young adult, Paulina had contact with star beings, alien intelligences, and dead people. She could hear people's thoughts, had an empathic, intuitive understanding of humans, animals, and nature, and often had a pre-cognizant knowing about certain people or events that would take place in the future or other parts of the world. When she was 25, she had a soul-activated near-death experience that was primed to remind her of what she had done in previous lifetimes. It also triggered a permanent change in her frequencies that would enable her soul and oversoul to continue their work in this lifetime without the hindrance of the forgetfulness and limitation of the 3D body. On a human level, the experience activated a deeper wisdom and understanding about her previous lives, her contact experiences, and her innate telepathic and empathic mediumship skills. It also put her back on track for her continued consciousness journey of deep cosmic memory with total soul recall. So we should definitely talk about total soul recall and what that means. Since the NDE, Paulina generally assists in any way she can in the ascension process of Earth and the collective spirit enlightenment and awakening of the galactic memory in humanity. Specifically, she is an esoteric map maker and earth whisperer who works in union with the soul consciousness of the earth, cosmic masters, interplanetary emissaries, angelic entities, and elemental guardians to cleanse and reactivate energies, geomythic templates, and interdimensional portals at planetary and cosmic sites. That's all. She also activates humans and assists particular soul entities to make and or develop their star connections and fully remember their cosmic heritage. Paulina has lifetimes of training and initiations under the tutelage of the gods and goddesses who are star-seated with our cosmic and genetic heritage. And this is an important aspect of her work and journey that she is now starting to teach more about and share in her books. Whew, that is a lot. It is intense, rich material, and we want to break that down so it's digestible for people because Paulina's grasp of things, I'll say that it's expansive. So, Miss Paulina, I wanted to kind of get people into the conversation gently with talking a bit about your NDE first. And I will recommend people, if you want to hear the full NDE story in terms of the preamble or what led to the NDE, to check out Jeff Mara. But I'll give you a little snapshot, Paulina, then you can grab it, expand it, and go with it. Does that sound cool?
Sure.
Okay, so Paulina is in Israel. She has a cyst that has burst. The hospital is not a really great environment for her. It's not, what would probably be used to Western cultures. And so she, on the way to the hospital, she basically dies and leaves her body, but it doesn't even feel like death. I feel like when Paulina talks about it, it just feels like she transitions out and then starts to explore. But what do you say, Paulina? You take that thread and run with it.
Okay. I was in Israel, and so I had this experience, and the cyst ruptured. And earlier in the day, I had been told by a specialist that I had a problem with a cyst on an ovary and that it may rupture. And I remember leaving thinking, I wonder what happens, how you feel. How would you know if a cyst ruptures? Turns out it's really easy to figure it out because everything goes into chaos and the body goes into toxic shock and there's pain and so on. So I knew straight away when something wasn't right, that was probably that was the cyst rupturing or something happening. So I wasn't well. I was feeling struggling to breathe. I had the pain in my body. I felt like I had an overdose of some kind of a drug running through my system. So everything was shaky, jittery. And I managed to, so I was living in a community in Israel. I managed to get somebody to go and find somebody for me who could potentially take me to the hospital or get an ambulance or whatever needed to happen. They happened to be the community nurse, and then the community doctor happened to be driving the car. So in the car, I was in the back seat. And I'm tall, and so the back seat wasn't long enough for me to lay down. So I was resting my body against the back of the side door of the back seat. Is that making sense? The door in the back of the car. And the nurse kept saying, lay down. And I thought, if I lay down, I don't think I'm going to survive this. Now, I want to say that with a sense of I was not frightened. I was not worried or concerned. Just my intuition felt if I lay down, I wouldn't survive it. So I was resting my head against the cool glass of the window, feeling like, that cool glass is just beautiful. And it was night. It was about 10 to 10:30 at night. So I was looking at the stars. I was looking up at the night sky and thinking, wow, the stars are amazing. And then I sort of moved out of my body. Before that, though, actually, there was a blue light, a big blue eye that came to about here, and then at my crown chakra, and began to, I'm going to say it was like it pulled me out, but in a way it was like there wasn't a pulling, but there was a drawing sensation. So I went out into the stars, and I went out of my body, and I could see the car below, and I could see the three people in the car, and I could see the road just ahead, and I could see the tops of the trees. And then it's like I took a breath, because I was really concentrating on breathing, and I ended up further out into the cosmos. And then I could see probably what was all of Israel. And I could see lights of cities in the distance. I could probably see some of the Mediterranean as well. Like I could see a significant amount up in the sky. And then I took another few breaths, and gradually, then I suddenly shot out into space. And I was in space, and I could see the planets. I could see the Earth. I could see other planets. I could see they were round. And as I was thinking, oh, wow, the elements went through my body. So each one went through. And so the earth went, the air went through, the fire went through, the water went through, and the earth went through. And as that was,
I was gonna say, they're going through your energetic body, like the elements are going through your energetic body. You feel it, like each aspect of each, the nature of each one going through your energy body. Is that right?
yes, because it's difficult to describe because my physical body was in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I wasn't in my physical body. But I also knew that I felt it in my body, if that makes sense. But I wasn't attached to my body. I was cord-wise, but not in my awareness of a body. So I felt it, a bit like if somebody sort of gasped particularly with the air, it just like flew through. Both the air and fire are quite, they're not solid elements, but I really felt them. And then the water. So, and as that happened, I thought, if anyone asked me a question about anything, wow, I know the answer. That's really interesting. And then I was in further out in space, and then I was in, the light was very bright, extremely bright. And I was in like a corridor of light, but it wasn't a corridor. So when we experience the other worlds and the other realms, not all of them are exactly like 3D Earth. So the experiences you have, you try to find words that are of the 3D realm in order to explain them. So like when I say there was a blue eye, I've never seen a blue in third dimension like that. So when I say there was a corridor of light, it wasn't a corridor and there wasn't a floor, but it was like that. The best description I can give is that it was like clouds, fluffy clouds in the light with doors or doorways, and I knew that each of those doors was potential for maybe Akashic Records, past life information, future life or future of the planet and the cosmos information. So there was, and it was relevant to me, but it was also relevant to the universal consciousness. And I felt really like I'd come home. I was really aware of thinking, I'm not my body, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my thoughts. And there was a foundation of love that was extraordinary. Everything was just pulsing and emanating with love. And in that place, which in really those feelings and sensations I'd probably had from the element scenario, that sort of feeling of I'm not a body, I'm all of these things, as are we all. So it wasn't just about me, it was about everything in the universe. And then I was a backpack. Well, I've traveled a lot in my life with a backpack, and I remember thinking that the aspect of me that was the human aspect of me, as in like my 3D self, was taking the backpack off after a really big day of walking with a backpack. And so I just let it go. And then I was in that space having this experience when the person in the car that my body was in realized that I didn't have a pulse, realized that she thought I'd gone. So she went into, I wouldn't say panic mode, but she was definitely concerned. And she was trying to see if I had a pulse. So she touched my wrist and there was nothing there. And then she was trying to reach through the back and go for my pulse in my neck. And it was touching my hand that jolted me back into the body, or jolted my awareness back into the body. But I wasn't fully back. And over the next few days, I kept leaving because my oversoul couldn't stay in. Like the intense experience that I'd experienced, no matter how long it took, the oversoul is a higher aspect of us. It's not the higher self, it's something different to that. It's in different frequencies. And it was trying to stay in, but the electrical frequencies hadn't quite balanced out yet. And so I instinctively knew water was a something I needed, not just on the inside, but on the outside of the body. So I managed to get to the shower, and it all felt quite dramatic because I couldn't really walk, and I was kind of half crawling along the floor to get into the shower, and then I couldn't reach the taps because I couldn't reach up. And then as soon as the water came in, I could feel my crown chakra settling. I could feel other parts of my body starting to settle back in, but I also knew that I was permanently different. That what I was before, frequency-wise, was not the same. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's obviously other things, but
well, yeah. Well, let's crack open the Akashic, the corridor and the Akashic records, and because I know that in your bio, and I think your talk with Jeff Mara, you do talk about that you did check out the Akashic records while you were on the other side. Am I remembering that accurately?
Well, for me, being in that, I was in the whole experience was in the Akashic records. So there was the corridor of light as such, and there were different rooms there. So I did check those out. Or it's actually not that I checked them out. Like I didn't kind of open a door and go, ooh, what's in there? It's more like all the doors opened. They were kind of swinging in the breeze, and all the information came forward. So it was information about past lives. It was information about the cosmos. It was information about the fact that we were all interconnected, and just information was flowing. So it came in, and with it came that aspects of that eternal memory.
I see what you're saying. It's kind of like the doors were open, the information all flowed in. There is no time space. So it's that you reconnected to it. So whatever you needed to know, it was there. So, you know, whether it was past, future, or other information, it was just all accessible because you were in that corridor. Is that accurate?
Yes, kind of, yes. And just
Kind
the
of.
experience of, kind of, and the experience of being in the stars and the experience of the four elements. And so if any of you are familiar with PMH Atwater, who does a lot of research about NDEs, she has said that it can take a minimum of 20 years of having had the experience to kind of continually download to understand now. And so there is that sense for me of things like a deeper understanding of the four directions and the elements. I knew that was really important, but a deeper understanding of that came as my knowledge base grew as well. And I settled in back into my body so I could manage it, because I also came back into a sick body. So, you know, there's all sorts of priorities that we have to do. And but I'm committed to my journey, and I always was committed. And so part of this NDE was really clear to me that I'd had experiences with ETs before. I'd had experiences with helpers and watchers and different beings. And what I needed to do was make it a really conscious experience so that I was consciously participating in it. And to some degree, I didn't feel like I wasn't managing it before, but managing it in a different way. And having these connections with these beings so that I could do the work that I came to do and go on the journey towards total soul recall and deep cosmic memory. So part of that experience was the deep cosmic memory, the accessing that, and then beginning the pathway in the journey and remembering the times I've done the pathway in the journey before.
Okay.
So that brings me with some questions, and I think that there's a request for a little bit more on the oversoul. And I know you cover that in your previous, but could we do like a hierarchy? I don't like the word hierarchy, but from the physical being to the oversoul of the different realms within us or of us in that process?
Okay. I'll give it a go. I think there are many, many, many dimensions, and predominantly as humans, we talk about third dimension. Occasionally people talk about second and first dimension. Fourth dimension, everybody wants to go to fifth dimension. And fifth dimension is predominantly the love frequency. And then there's the sixth dimension, which is sacred geometric things and symbols, and the seventh dimension, which is sound, and eighth. So we go up at different frequencies. And in angel work that I used to do, I would be up in the 14th and 15th dimension. But I also know that there's about at least 96 to 100 different dimensions that we can access, and more, I'm sure. So like, I don't want to limit it because I actually think the whole thing about consciousness is it's limitless and boundless. But so the oversoul is the aspect of us that's at least 10th dimension and beyond. That's my understanding of it currently. So I may understand more as I learn more. And that aspect of us is, it's not like you kind of have to, you could, I guess, you could go up each dimension in order to access the 10th dimension. And certainly when I used to do the Sing with the Angels, we would go through the different dimensions and connecting with the angels. So you can do it that way. But the oversoul, so I mentioned the higher self, and the higher self is the aspect of us that's sort of tends to hang around. And I always get careful because I know someone else is going to say something different. So please feel free to say something different. I'm not attached to what I'm saying, but this is my understanding of it. So the higher self tends to be outside the body, but not far from the body, in the sense that you can quite easily connect in through the crown chakra. The oversoul, though, is an extension of the part of us that is non-physical, and it would not be easy for the oversoul to be in a physical body because it is not meant to be. The frequencies, the energetic patterns are, I don't like to talk about high and low, but they're too high to be in a 3D physical form. Is that clarifying that answer?
I think so. The other part of that is where consciousness lies within that. So are you aware of who you are here at that level? Does that make sense?
Yes, it's kind of like a CEO, you know,
Okay.
chief executive officer, kind of. So at each dimension of our existence, we have different aspects that are guiding and healing and being that level of a CEO. But the oversoul is that part of us that knows it all, knows what we came to do, has a higher frequency that's monitoring it, kind of. And then initially, when I knew my oversoul wasn't in, I was like, I just knew my oversoul wasn't coming in. And I thought, I'm not really sure I know exactly what my oversoul is, but I just know it can't get in. So then the fuller understanding of the dimensionality or the frequency it was in started to develop.
So it's where does your oversoul reside? Inside, outside, everywhere?
The oversoul doesn't, mine is in here, like there's a direct line. If it's not in here, there's a direct line to in here. And what I mean by that is there's a conscious direct line. So we're all having that aspect of connection to the oversoul, but for many, it's just at an unconscious level. I knew if I didn't get my oversoul properly connected back, I would not survive it.
That you would die?
So
okay.
So I also know that you need to have the connection with the oversoul in order to be able to fully be human.
Okay, that's interesting. Michelle, what do you know about the oversoul, or what thoughts do you have? I see you nodding your head there, so I feel like you're like running right next to her.
I am absolutely loving this. You know, I'm someone, I work within the 15 dimensions, and I work with the 12 chakra system. And so I'm absolutely thrilled to hear you talking about like these different dimensions, because so many people think that the 5th dimension is the ultimate. It's like, once we get there, oh, you know, we're there. And there's so much more. And there's even dimensions within dimensions. And there's dimensions that are offshooted dimensions. It's crazy. And so when you were talking about the oversoul, I love the way that you explained it, because it's part of all of it, but it isn't all of it. But it is, but it isn't. And that's kind of how all this stuff is. And it was neat when Linda asked about where the consciousness is. It was really cool because I got this direct blue light came down and went, we're everywhere.
Yes.
It was like that blue light. And I think it was similar to the color of the blue that you experienced in your near-death experience. But I love the way you described that. I love the way that you put that, because it makes it usable. It allows the brain to kind of figure out what it is, because I really feel like where we're going and as we're transforming as humans, this understanding of the oversoul is really important, because we need to have that conscious connection for the next phases as human beings. So I really want to thank you for that. That was amazing.
Well, thank you, and for further clarifying that. And I agree with you in relation to the oversoul. And I also think it's in the sense of we need to have information, because quite a lot of what's happened in the last 20 to 30 years with the spiritual awakening that's been going on, the collective spiritual awakening. There's either a complete ungroundedness in it. I come across that a lot, and it's like, it's all wonderful, it's fantastic, isn't it brilliant? And it is, and yet we need to be grounded in it. But also that sense of there's a lot of logical, sequential thinking and experiencing behind how people experience the other realms, and they want to define it, and they want to say it's that, it's not this, or you do it this way, you don't do it that way.
Right.
Or they read a lot of books, and that's fantastic, or they go and see their teachers, whatever. But it's like when we have the impact of direct experience and heart experience, so it's the right brain, it's the absolute direct experience of it, there's a real understanding that it's all difficult to define. It's all interconnected. There is no separation really from the first dimension to the 100th dimension, because everything is in itself. And so within us, we have all those dimensions resonating at some frequency within us. So where the sun is resonating within our bodies. Where the moon is resonating in our bodies, and then way further out. So we are part of everything, and there's no separation. But to clarify it becomes a really difficult left brain, and the left brain's going, oh, so, okay, can you just repeat that for me, please? Whereas
About
the
10
right
times.
brain's going, oh, it's in the heart. Yes, I feel that. I've got that. And that's where we're currently, I feel, in the pointy end of that awakening, is how do we actually embrace all of that instead of defining, making it logical and saying it's this or it's that. It's like, let's just be it, because in the being of it, the interconnection is profound. It continues the opening process, and it takes you to places that the left brain would never even know exist. Like as a child, I knew about other realms, and I knew that there were past lives, and I knew that consciousness existed, all those sorts of things. But if somebody had said to me, oh, you're going to have a near-death experience, I was like, oh, okay. And I did believe in afterlife. So all of those things, but it's not something that my left brain was going, and I'm going to have an NDE, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. It was like the soul is within each of us and working within each of us in its unique patterning, and our own sense of cosmic consciousness coming through us, and our own unique aspect of consciousness. And it's boundless, so we can go anywhere.
All right, Miss Angela would like to cross-examine you, Paulina, so buckle in.
Okay, I got my seatbelt on.
Okay, cool. So one thing I noticed is that your NDE story is so different from what people envision of a death experience. For you, it was not going down a tunnel, so to speak, and not seeing a loved one come to greet you and guide you along the way. It was almost as if having had a knowing prior to this event that you were exposed to more, like you were exposed to that which you already knew, and you were activated in a sense to gain a more tactile awareness of what you already knew, to bring it home, to be able to communicate it, and to help others become aware of that which is. And so my question is kind of, how did you bring that back and integrate it into everyday life? Like when you came back and met with your family, so to speak, like was your family in this space? Like I realized like you already had this knowing going into this event, but when you came back and all these things happened to you and you had this expanded awareness, did you immediately communicate that to your family, and were they on board, and how did you integrate that in a practical way going forward from that event?
Good questions. There's a few different layers to those questions. So if I don't answer it and go off on a tangent that you don't want me to, bring me back.
Okay.
I was by myself at the time that I had that. I was living in a community, but I wasn't near my family. And so my family were not necessarily a part of people that, well, they weren't people that I would see every day. I took time to integrate it. As I said, I was in Israel. I needed to get back to the UK. I just needed to get back. I needed some health treatment or medical treatment. And I also really felt I needed to go back to study art therapy because I'd already done art and other psychology and stuff. So I needed to go back and do art therapy. So that process for me was, it was about trying to bring forward a way of working with people to help them with dying, because I was doing that, but also to help me better help people in the non-verbal, because my kinesthetic is my primary. I am clairvoyant, clairsentient, all of those things, telepathic, empathic, they're all empathic and telepathic are my main things, and my kinesthetic. And I knew that a verbal therapy was not going to do it for me, and also it wasn't going to help me help other people. So part of the integration process for me was like finding ways to explore that for myself. And I had great people who were part of that degree that I was doing. But I also knew that they hadn't had the experience, not in a, oh, they haven't had the experience, they don't understand it, but more I could feel intuitively that they were transpersonal, but it wasn't transpersonal enough for me. So I was constantly thinking, how do I integrate this? What do I do? And I was studying past lives. I was having my own past life experiences, but I was studying how to be a past life practitioner. I was doing stuff with the soul of the earth. The 4 directional stuff came in, but I generally didn't talk about the NDE. And it wasn't because it was a major secret. I just didn't talk about it because like it was beyond where other people were at. And I don't mean the experience of my NDE. I mean, just when I had my NDE, NDEs were not well known. Plus they were being psychology and the paranormal was being placed into a scientific field. And I think they were doing that deliberately, partly to encourage it in the collective, to be seen as a worthy experience and not just woo-woo and daft. But equally, the flip side of that was to encourage disinformation and confusion about it. And so in the process of exploring and quantifying, and I'm saying quantifying because that's a very left brain way of experiencing NDEs, they had 5 principal questions, 2 of which were, and so they wanted yes/no answers basically, because that's how qualitative and quantitative, but particularly that last one, research works. So they were asking, did you see a light? Hence why most people talk about, I saw a light. And also, did you go in a tunnel? Because they'd done some research and people had said they went into a tunnel, or they went into the light, or they saw their relatives, or they saw the dog, or they did all those. So they became standardized questions. But the element of consciousness was not explored because it was too intangible. And so that was where I was at. So I was interested in the research that was being done, and I was part of a documentary about NDEs. But every time I did anything, I came away with, this is about consciousness, but how do I share that information? How do I get that? And now I see that people are really getting that more and more. But what's also happened is people are now worried about going into the light or going into the tunnel because they feel it's an entrapment. And it's like, we've just run ourselves into this circle and cycle of misinformation, confusion. And so all of these things have impacted how I've settled into my experiences, how I can best use what I know. And the fact that most of my stuff is non-verbal and consciousness oriented, finding words to talk about it, not so much necessarily finding words to talk about it, but finding words and concepts to talk about that people get is a completely different kettle of fish. I remember years ago, I still help people who have serious illnesses, but I used to work in a cancer center and do healing, and I ran and counseling, and I ran a weekly group. And there were people who came in as practitioners, other complementary practitioners as well. And some of them would do Reiki and others would do hands-on. And I'd have conversations with people sometimes and say, you know, what kind of healing do you do? And it wasn't like, what kind of healing are you doing? It was more just a conversation, because then it's about, we learn things from each other. And I found many people would say, I don't know, I just put my hands on them and they're healed. And I think that's really wonderful. But I think if you know what you're tapping into and how you're tapping into that and what element of consciousness and frequency you're working at, you grow and change with it. But also you're completely clear what energies you're bringing through. And you know that you won't be thinking you're bringing through Jesus, but actually you're bringing through a masked Jesus who's just a different aspect of your higher self that's actually not Jesus at all. So long-winded way of trying to answer that. I'm trying to, again, give some kind of concrete examples of things. Sorry about that.
I think that was good. How do you feel about that, Angela? Did that?
I think that was good. Yeah.
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 Miss Linda?
So having been one of those people that has touched somebody and had a healing twice now, when I was not very conscious of doing anything and having it happen, what recommendations do you have in learning how that happens, where that comes from, and getting in touch with that?
In the capacity of doing healing and having spontaneous things happening.
Mm-hmm.
Well, firstly, this for me is also a bit connected to glamour and spiritual glamour, because when we open up to other energies, all and any energies can come forward, and it's quite glamorous, and because it's wondrous and it's beautiful. And so many people will continually say, it comes through my palms. I know that much. It comes through my palms, or comes through my eyes, or it comes through my feet, or whatever it does. And I know that, and I picked that up. But what they haven't done is dropped into it, into the heart. They haven't gone, where am I feeling it in my body? Not just in my hands. Where am I feeling it? Are there any voices I hear? And throughout history, people who've heard voices have ended up in institutions. So, that's another thing that people won't go, well, I know this happens, but I'm not prepared to go there because I don't want to be considered weird. And I've spent most of my time talking, and I've seen that weird alert look. I've seen that look in people's eyes. I have experienced it time and time again. It's like, oh, she's gone into that. I can't go there.
Me too.
And yet people really do want to know how to manage it, particularly children, if they're having stuff happening all the time. They're having, there was a young boy actually near this area, there's this picture behind me, who was having experiences with Sasquatch, and he was having other experiences that were frightening him. And he just needed somebody to say, this is what's happening. This is how you can interact with them. If you don't want it to happen, you can stop it. So that's another thing, is learning ways to stop it, learning ways to manage it, learning ways that you don't have to share it with everybody you meet, learning ways to establish, are you kinesthetic? Are you oral? Like, do you hear things? Do you see things? If we see things, predominantly in the world, people who see things get the glory, because, oh, I can see there's a being behind you, or I can see that there's a horse running there. And the people who hear things, you're hearing voices, people, we're not going to talk about that. And if you feel things, in the beginning stages, for some people, when they feel things and they're tuning in, let's say, to understand, they get a funny little feeling maybe in the tip of their right pinky. Or they might just think, I feel a bit cold, or I'm not, often it's the gut instinct, isn't it? It's the gut that churns. but they don't explore it any further. So it's about finding the way that for you, you interact with the invisible realms, let's call them, the non-physical realms, and then practicing that. And we are all predominantly born with at least one way of doing it, and we can develop our other ways of doing it. And so when you see somebody standing on what they call a platform doing a reading, and spontaneous healings may happen there, and things like that, that's the energy coming through. And they may say it's God, they may say it's Jesus, they may say it's some other, the angels, it may be Mary Magdalene, they may say that, or it's their guides. And some people who work on platforms, they know the energy that they're receiving really well, but they work differently to someone like me, because for me, I would be investigating the different realms of those experiences, not just the guides that I am with, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So practice, and each time you practice, there'll be a level of understanding, and then there'll be a level of initiation, and you'll be placed in a situation sometimes where you feel, wow, this is interesting, or I think sometimes we get to a level where it's not like we're in necessarily new territory, but we're in territory where it's another level of initiation. So the spirit world, the higher realms, they want to work with us always, and the ones that are supportive of human growth, and same with ETs, the ones that are supportive of human growth and what's happening on the planet, will work with us, but they need us to grow and change as well.
I think you just said something too, and when those happened with me, I was just in such a state of love with these individuals, and I was just massaging them to help them feel better.
How beautiful.
And I just had this state of love. And then afterwards, I think that the thing that I did right was when I saw the response, I immediately stopped and said, what just happened? How did I feel? Where did I feel it in my body? What was going through my consciousness? And was I present? Was I this? And just really kind of got into the awareness of what I was at that moment. And then when it happened the second time, I went through those same questions, and I realized really clearly both times I was completely detached thinking wise. I was not thinking about doing anything. I was loving completely and holding their hands or massaging, and that was it. Like I feel like I just got out of the way.
Yes, I think that's great. Great descriptions, and it's we get out of the way, but we remain consciously aware.
Mm-hmm.
And like, not relative to healing, but in my therapy work with people to do with soul, or also to do with just normal lifetime stuff, which the soul is, but normal lifetime stuff. People will often say, who've had a traumatic event of some kind, they had a gut instinct, but they did not respond in relation to their gut instinct. And now it may be that they met the person who they thought was the love of their life, but their gut instinct said, stay away, don't go near them. And they just went, oh, but I feel this and I'm going. And later, when everything goes pear-shaped, they go, I knew from the very beginning. So it's also about understanding that our body tries to give us clues all the time, as does our intuition. And we need to understand how to discern it. Also relevant to what's going on right now in our changing and our awakening. It's like discernment and intuition are not acted upon often by people. They look without the answers rather than within. So what you were doing in there is trusting the love instinct, but it was also your intuition and discernment saying, stay out of the way, let the love flow through, but paying attention and using your awareness to track it. In that shamanic way, it's about tracking it, isn't it? We track what's happening.
Did you say, I think this is what you said, they were looking for the answer instead of being it? Is that what you said? I love that. That's a t-shirt. That's a mug. Miss Angela,
Yeah,
yes.
I think the term healer can be kind of misconstrued, misunderstood, because realistically, we're all healers. We're all our own healers. And in the case of one, quote unquote, healing another, what really takes place is that you are holding a space of love, being able to get into the heart space and allowing the love to flow through. And it's the love that resonates with that area of that individual that needs to be healed. So it's almost like you serve as proxy for that individual and allow the healing to flow through, but it's the love that does the healing. And everyone is capable of that love. And to consider it as one is a healer of you is one of the many ways that we individually give our own power away rather than owning that. So functioning from that love, it's the love that illuminates, and it's the love that does the healing. It's the love that resonates with those areas that need to remember who they are, so to speak.
Yes,
Can I
I
speak
think
to
that,
that for a moment?
Yeah, hop in.
One of the things that that's so good, Angela. One of the things that I really work with my students and clients is exactly what you're talking about, is like if that term healer has gotten so distorted and certain belief systems and everything put on it, but a true healer is someone who holds the perfection in that space until it is almost like we all resonate, right? And pretty soon we're all vibrating together. It's that same thing. And it's so beautiful, and it's so wonderful to hear, you guys talking about it in this way, because it's something I knew since when I was a child. And it's so cool because people are finally getting it, and getting it that we're each our own healer. We're each our own guru, right? We're each our own, and we need to find this within, but it doesn't mean we have to do it alone. Being together because we all vibe together, that also is part of the process. But like you said, Angela, it's like keeping your own power. Keeping your power, you are a part of this. And it's amazing. It takes a while to get people to kind of start switching over to that, because some of especially my students are like, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to go out and heal the world. It's like, no.
yeah, and I think that's both of those points, really, really great points, because we don't hold, if people hold space, they're considered to be doing nothing. And yet holding space is the most amazing thing that we can do. And certainly in the last couple of years on our glorious planet, there's been things happening where people are looking for answers consistently. What's going to happen? Who's going to do that? What's going to happen next? And looking without themselves. And they feel they're doing nothing if they're holding a frequency and holding space, because the right brain holds space and just says, I'm holding the healing space for myself. I'm holding for whatever will be in the highest frequency, whatever. But the left brain's going, oh my God, I've got to do this is going to happen. This just doesn't make sense. You can feel the panic of the left brain of humanity in the collective realm going, I need answers. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical. Who put this in place? What's going on? What am I going to do? But love is the foundation of absolutely everything in the universe. And if we drop into that love vibration and we drop into just holding love, if nothing else, that's the biggest thing you can do. Holding that frequency, and each person will find their way to heal, whatever that means for them, and share that by being themselves with others. We just, the best thing we can be is to be who we are, whatever that may be. And the healing happens in the moment. And it's also about being fully present, like in counseling and therapies and psychology, in the practice of it. It's about providing unconditional positive regard for your client. That's missing in the world generally. The other thing that's missing in the world generally, which is important in the therapeutic relationship, is to listen. And to listen with as much of you as possible that you can, and be present and pay attention and respond with love. And when we do that, that's when little children come and reach up to you and want to hold your hand. And that's when you get the honor of working or being with people who share their deepest, darkest, saddest, most horrific, most beautiful, most enlightening stories, because they know it's safe, and they know that they can be who they are without judgment, without control, without power, without abuse. It's like, who are we? And how can we love each other and fully be present in that moment? And those things that you talk about are so huge, and yet we've just disconnected and lost them, but we're gathering it back. It's like it's not on a rubber band anymore. It's now on a string that we just keep kind of like pulling it in and pulling it in and pulling it in, and each time integrating it into a new aspect and high frequency of ourselves.
Do you want to wrap it up on this section, Linda? Because we were at the top of the hour and I want to grab another direction, but you want to wrap it up, Miss Linda?
This is kind of a grab. Let me see if I can remember it now. It was there. And then,
Oh, no.
yes, it's there. So many people are talking about the divercation of people almost going to another dimension. Others saying we're here, both going to be here. We're just going to have totally different experiences. Another that I hear is how many people are leaving this planet because they're not at the right frequency, quote unquote. And your take of that, I mean, part of what I'm coming to realize is that you can offer the healing, but the other person has to accept it. But beyond that little piece, what do you say about all of these things that we're hearing in this world right now, as far as
Bifurcation.
frequencies and
Well, ascension, yeah. Our glorious planet that we live on has been cleansing her frequencies. She's been lifting her vibrations. She's been ascending or moving towards ascension. Those of us who've been helping her or just being present on her in our own way. As we do our own work, we help the earth. Without having to focus on the earth, just by doing our own work, we help the earth. So her frequencies are changing, and she's becoming more of she's becoming more able to share that galactic energy with us. Now, that's always been present, but human species has not been ready for it. And so as that happens and the celestial energies are coming in more strongly, the ascension process has been kind of not so much kickstarted because it's been going for a long time, but more and more people are becoming aware of that existing. And the veils between the worlds are becoming thinner. And as the veils become thinner, the bleed through happens. And so, for example, there's places I go for walks regularly and spend time in nature, and even not just in nature, but the different frequencies are starting to show up more. And so there's a place I walk, and each day I go there, it's completely different. Sometimes the plants are really tall, sometimes they're short, like babies. The rocks get taller, and then another day they're shorter. And so there's a whole load of stuff which is different dimensional aspects of those worlds, if you like, just in different frequencies, and also in past or present or future, different realms. And each of us as a soul came onto this planet knowing what was going to happen. Now, we may not have known exactly how all the stuff was going to manifest, because that's a part of the tweaking that goes on, but we all knew that. And some souls were not here I'm not saying they didn't have a long haul before that, but some souls were not going to be in a physical human body for this experience. Some souls were going to incarnate specifically for this experience. Some souls were going to have one response to what's being asked of human species at the moment, and other people were going to have another response. I'm being careful how I say that because of the situation that we're in. And there's no judgment with that, because each of us has a soul, and some people are worried that if something's going to happen that's going to eat the soul, human species is in danger. And it's like the soul will go back to source and replenish itself and reform anew. So does that answer the question from my point of view?
Linda, you're muted.
Yes, I believe it does. Thank you so much.
A pleasure. Thank you for
Did you want to say
asking
something
questions.
about that? Oh, sorry to cut you off there, Paulina. Did you want to say something, Michelle? I saw you
I did.
stirring.
I'm just like loving this so much. I love that. And I think we have to be really careful to not look upon others like, oh, you didn't reach the vibration, or, we're all here having our experience. We're all here. We're all important. None of us are further along or anything. We're all in this journey together, just having different experiences. And it's so important, because that is part of keeping the vibration up. As soon as we start thinking, oh, well, they didn't have their vibration right, or, they weren't meant to be here. It lowers our vibration. It lowers our vibration. So it's so important to see everybody's journey as perfect and wonderful and divinely guided and perfect for them, and see them whole and healthy and wonderful, no matter what their circumstance is. And I want to share a little something that's kind of funny along these lines a little bit. My ex-husband, wasn't necessarily the nicest person in the world, and he passed away, and I had a few naughty thoughts like, well, he didn't make it, right? Well, as we're moving along, he's starting to come through to me in my dream time, helping with stuff. And I was kind of like, well,
Yeah.
maybe I was wrong. Maybe he needed to be on the other side to do what he's doing, because he's actually been a great help with me with my children. And he was not that when he was on this side of the veil. And so it's little things like that we have to remember. We don't know any other soul's journey. We just honor it.
Sorry, I spoke over you. I do apologize there, Michelle.
No problem. Go ahead.
There's two things that come to mind for me, is that in the afterlife, my experience was there's no judgment. There's no, oh, you got that wrong.
Yeah.
You set that up, but you did that badly. They're like, hi, welcome back. How was it? What did you learn? And if there's no words spoken of that, that's the feeling that you get in that love vibration. And in relation to what you're saying about your ex-husband, a classic example of that more and more people are aware of is The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. Yeah. And that's a book where a woman wrote it about her brother. And when he was on planet Earth, he struggled with all sorts of things. And then when he started making contact with her, she was like, well, I must have got that wrong. He must be... he's got all this information. And I mean, that said, something else that comes to my mind is we do need to discern that, because if somebody didn't know how to do quantum mechanics when they were alive, they might have aspects of quantum mechanics when they're dead, but they're not going to be an expert on quantum mechanics. And so sometimes just because somebody's dead doesn't make them the clear channel for information that we may hope them to be.
Yeah, they don't become automatically all-knowing.
No. And in the elemental worlds and with different beings that I work with, and particularly with the devic realms, like the gnomes, the fairies, the sylphs, and
The
anything and
mermaids.
everything to do with the guardians of the earth, if they don't know something, they're not like humans. They don't fake it till they make it. They go, that's not in my manifesto or my portfolio, or I don't know, I'm going to have to ask about that. Or actually, you're not allowed to ask about, so that, but they will work from their boundaries of what they understand. And so in the hierarchy of knowledge and information, it's respected. And it's not, I'm just going to fake it till I make it and wing it, and no one will know that this is happening, because they are in charge of quite serious things that keep the planet and all the species that live on her body and all the visitors that come from other galaxies. They keep this planet functioning and healthy.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I feel like the content you have is so rich, and there's each section we could take, and like that could be its own show to hang out with and talk with you about the Devic realm and the fairies and the mermaids. And Michelle's a mer girl, so I hope that we get a mermaid question in there at some point.
That would be fun.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because I titled this show "Returning to the Stars" because that kind of is your manifesto, is helping people return to the stars. And I wanted to know what that means. I want to know what that means for you. I know, and we've kind of already talked about it. You already kind of like gave us some really strong indications of that. But in terms of returning to the stars and your relationships with, we'll say, ETs and gods, and like we talked about like the gods of Olympus, and we've talked about, you've had ET connections, you have all these connections. And one thing I want to get to is, what's the difference between an ET and a god? I want to know that. But what I also want to know is just kind of like, what does it mean for you that we're returning to the stars? What does that mean? How are we returning to the stars?
Okay. Like everything, there's layers to the answer to that question. So there's a number of aspects. One is recognizing that death is not the final frontier. Death is the beginning of, or it's not the beginning of a new existence, it's the return to the previous place. So that's an aspect of returning to the stars. And in indigenous cultures around the world, they talk about how to access the stars, the planets that you came from, the cosmos, consciousness itself, God, whatever, is returning back to that. So there's an element of that. And certainly my experience with the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water, was really a pointer of yes, I've done this before, but hadn't I needed to really identify that, but also that how matter manifests from the 4 elements. And in science, they talk about it as carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen. And in earth-based cultures, they talk about it as earth, air, fire, and water. And in quantum physics, they talk about it in a different way. But so it's how matter forms. And that's what I was being shown, is like the way those elements come together forms the matter. And in the same way, that matter dissolves after life when we go back to consciousness and we return to the stars. So there's that aspect of it. But we were all born, we come from the stars. We are galactic beings because we are the cosmos, and the cosmos runs within us. So the more we can understand that, the stronger our contact gets with different beings from different places, but also we return back to the stars in our conscious living awareness. And it's a higher frequency. It's a definite love frequency. It's a full understanding. If we're not our body, we're not our mind, we're not our thoughts, what are we and who are we and where did we come from and why are we here? So all of those questions begin to be answered in galactic frequencies. And galactic frequencies promote interconnectedness. So all of these things assist in the process of remembering who we are. In our genetic blueprint as human beings, we were star-seeded, as was our planet. We have a similar blueprint, and we're meant to be symbiotic in our relationship with our planet. And that's been forgotten. And some of that has been a deliberate forgetting. We've been given misinformation, or we've just been encouraged to separate. And some of it happened because of the fall of consciousness and the recommendation that instead of having the human species consciously connected to abuse it, the journey was to be consciously connected, but to grow and learn and change with it so that the abuse would not happen again. So it's part of why we're encouraged to do that, and part of why we're being encouraged to do that, because we live in a time when high frequencies, galactic consciousness, ascension process is the fundamental agenda, if you like, for everything in the cosmos right now. And so the beings who come from Pleiades, Sirius, Andromeda, Arcturus, Cygnus, you name it, pretty much any planet you can think of. They've been coming here for long periods of time. They have had connections with humanity. Sometimes they have helped people go off planet if need to for particular times, or go in planet, because there are also beings in planet, to facilitate our human development. And they come and they have seeded places. And I've mentioned in other talks I've done about places where they have been seeded. And that was just a small selection. And so everything in the higher realms is working to help us to understand that anything and everything that exists in the universe and in the cosmos is connected to the stars. There is no separation. And the difference between ETs and gods. I personally struggle a little bit with ETs. I know it's a really common expression, and it's like extraterrestrials. But for me, they're like our galactic ancestors often. And so like if I call them ETs, there's a separation point that happens. If I call them non-physical higher intelligences, it's kind of getting closer, but even that has a sort of sense of it. So beings that come from different galaxies, or beings that come from inner Earth, often they work at a higher frequency. They can work, certainly in the last 25 to 30 years, and they've always been coming to Earth, but there's been an agenda, it's not the right word. There's been a mass movement, if you like, of them coming in, and they're coming in to help humanity to do things. Now, there are people who say, you've got to be careful with them because they're not all of the light. And I'm not arguing with that. In the work that I'm doing, the beings that are coming forward are manifesting an awareness to help humanity. Now, they're not coming in and trying to heal us. They're encouraging us to understand our process of how that works and how to do it ourselves. And so lots of that has been going on. And they come from different galaxies. And some of them have been involved in the creation of humanity. But I don't see them as the necessarily seeding aspects of the human species. And the connection with them may run unconsciously in our bodies and our frequencies and our minds and our thoughts. And, we see a picture of a grey maybe, and people have an autonomous response or something, or they go, oh my God, or they go, oh, that's my family, whatever. So there's something there. But the gods in the frequencies of the gods and goddesses and the process of that is connected to the mythological and the archetypal imprints in our DNA and RNA. and we are affected by them. And in psychology, they talk about them as the archetypal energies. And, you know, are you a teacher? Are you an educator? Are you a healer? Are you a this? Are you a that? They're great ways of understanding more about who we are. And then you can take it to the next level of, well, who am I really if I'm not all those things? But in the mythologies and the archetypal imprints that run through us and have been placed in the earth and are part of the world myths, so every culture all over the world has stories about the creation. And it's not just about Noah's Ark, but Noah's Ark is one of those stories. They have creation stories, and they have gods, the names of gods, and they transpose through every culture. So every culture will have a different name for God. Every culture will have a different name for Mary Magdalene. Many cultures will have a different name for Jesus. But the gods are part of the seeding of humanity, in my understanding at this point, and they are part of how we can, through our connection with them, we can transform ourselves into the memory of our galactic consciousness. And that in that process, we begin to understand more and start and have a process of deep cosmic memory. So they will all come, the galactic beings, the cosmic guardians, the gods, and the ray masters, and angels, and anything and everything can come and assist in that process of helping to develop cosmic memory. And we can have within our genetic blueprint the beings from other places. But the gods have a different experience, because what they're doing is helping us remember the real truth of the human condition, the human, the seeding of humanity, how we got here, where we come from, how the planet got here. And the Ray Masters are part of that journey as well. And now the Ray Masters were often humans, and they ascended and they became Ray Masters, and they look after particular colors of the ray. So,
Ray Masters. I thought you said Rain Masters.
Ray,
Ray Masters. Okay.
Are those like the lords of the seven rays?
In some
like
ways,
Hilarion, Venetian.
Yes. And so they
Michelle knows her stuff.
And look after a particular ray and a color of a ray. And there's in the colors of the rays, there's a light frequency of the ray and then a dark frequency. And I'm not talking about light and dark, I'm talking about the color. So if you've got blue, you've got dark blue, and you've got light blue, and they're still blue, but they're different frequencies of that color. And they have had embodiments as human beings. They have ascended and they become masters of different rays. And everyone who's born is in service to one ray predominantly. And that ray is their ray of service, and it impacts their relationships, it impacts their personality, it impacts the work they do, and so on. In my case, one of the things that became clear from the NDE was that I'd done this stuff before, but within my encoded imprint is a connection to all the rays, to work and interact with all the rays, and to work and act with and interact with all different frequencies of those rays, which is also about physical beings, light beings, different cosmic beings. So they're beings, but they've had lives as humans, and they're working on looking after the planet, looking after the cosmos, interacting with that. And I have great respect for Ray Masters, and I'm very grateful for everything, every communication I have with them. But I personally don't consider them as the seeding gods. They work with the seeding gods and they have relationships with them, but it's different. So everything in the higher realms, the same as in the human realms, it's just different levels of frequencies. And then sorry.
I want pictures and diagrams. It's just it's a lot for me to think, because I'm trying to process who the ETs are, or the extra, I mean, which I get, they are our cosmic, they're our star nations, they're our cosmic family. And, you know, like how they are underneath the auspicious, or the, not the auspicious, I'm trying to say the auspices of, that's probably not the right word either, but of who the gods are. And like, you know, how they relate back to the gods. But at the same time, I don't want to get so far down the rabbit hole that people are just scratching their heads, because it does get rather deep. Did you have a thought, Angela? I see you came
Yeah,
off
I
mute.
do. I do.
Yeah.
And in my perspective is a little bit different because honestly, I think we get caught up in the projection, the illusion, and
Yes.
the external, and thinking that there are things outside of us that we need to rely and depend on or go in depth, like down a rabbit hole about, when essentially it's about us internally and understanding who we are in truth. We are the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And the oneness is the totality of that. And embracing that will allow us to see it in our world. And that's what we are being reminded of, that oneness. It has to start on the inside. It has to start here in being in balance, learning to live in balance. And that's what all these cosmic guides are coming to remind us of. They're not coming to do it for us. They're coming to remind us of who we are. And this is who we are. And that this is the power that we have to walk in. It's easy to get seduced into trying to understand, because we have a logical mind, and that logical mind is going to continue to question and continue to question and continue to question. And it's going to take you down a rabbit hole, really. But essentially, the baseline fact is remembering who you are, remembering to operate from the space of the heart, that point of oneness. And that in itself is the foundational piece that affects our world, because we are the divine creators of the world that we see. We are projecting our individual realities. It's not about anybody else. The world outside of us just serves to remind us of who we are, offer up those catalysts, offer up those lessons and those challenges that force you to see yourself for who you are, the good and the bad, the shadows and the light. You get to see it all, but all of that which lies outside of you is a reflection of what lies within you. So once the inside, or the heart space, the oneness, the divine feminine and masculine are balanced, then that's when we see it in our world. And that's when the world is changed. So in a nutshell, I was trying to wrap it up as summary. Yeah.
I agree with you completely. And in the description of what I was giving was to try to explain the esoteric map making work and the connection with beings. But I absolutely agree with everything that you've said. But people are interested in those beings and that, because that's a part of, to some degree, yes, it's a part of the left brain wanting to know more. And that's what I struggle with, is because for me, it's not about the left brain.
Yeah.
But how can I facilitate that left brain so that people understand more about what I'm doing and also what other people do? But ultimately, what you've said is absolutely the foundation of it all. And that is, for me, what fuels everything that I do.
Yeah.
You know, go ahead.
Sorry. I think those other beings, like the beings that people would term extraterrestrials, they're just another aspect of us. Absolutely. Functioning in different ways. Absolutely. And a different projection of us, learning along a different path that leads back to that oversoul level of knowledge that we are looking to attain. It's just another mode of expansion, another avenue that we take as multidimensional beings. Yeah.
You know, I had an experience, and I've shared it here several times, but I'm going to do it again because it's so on topic. Is about a year ago, I went into meditation and show me what oneness is. And I called the angels, and I called my star family, and I called the masters, and I called the Mahakoans, and I called the, and I had rings of beings around me. I'm like, yes. What is oneness? Show me what oneness is. And they all turned and looked at me and had my face. And it was holy cow. And then it was whoo, into my heart. And it was ever since then, you know, my perception has been very, very different about things, but it's amazing. And I like to share that because I love for people to think on that in their own meditations, you know, because so many of us are used to calling from without, and we're really calling it up from within. It all starts here.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful.
And that's like the story of Medusa. And that's where I think the myths and archetypes can be helpful, because you flip them over. You have to, you can experience them, that every one of those myths runs through us, and they are guidance points for understanding of ourselves. So like in your experience, seeing yourself reflected everywhere. And in stories like the story about Medusa, which I'm not going to go into, but that's also about that reflection back of things. So all of those stories were really important cultural stories to help us get back onto track. It's about going within. It's about staying with who we are. Yes. What's the resonance for me? Why do I think mermaids are really interesting? Why, or what is it about fairies? Or why do I have a connection with dolphins? That's the left brain going with that. And then the stories are imprinted in our field, and we go, oh, because I'm connected to everything. And maybe, you know, dolphins wise had a connection with them in Sirius, you know, so things can happen that we can learn more about ourselves. But that's actually the left brain wanting to know more. But it's all about the encompassing within our field, about that we are all of those things, and how they manifest is part of our unique expression of consciousness experiencing itself.
So good.
We have a question from the audience. So the question is, did all this information come slowly as downloads from your NDE or afterwards, or from studying since that time, from both? Or did you get that, like most of this, as you said, you were bringing all that information in as you were walking down that hall? Did that stay with you? How much of this came right then and stayed with you, and how much have you picked up in other ways since then?
I think it's a combination of things, because if all the information, I mean, the information was there, but if all the information was there until I'd had time to sort it through, frequencies would explode. You know, we talked earlier, didn't we, Linda, about what can happen around computers.
Yes.
So it's like, it needs to be a manageable experience. But all of my experiences that I talk about, some of that's the deep cosmic memory that comes from really honoring the deep cosmic memory and the experiences we've had before, and that journey back to soul total recall and a oneness with the consciousness. But it's also direct experience. So I don't read about stuff. For me, it's about where it comes into me, because that gets back to what Angela was talking about, is that sense, and also Michelle, that sense of, it's that what is within us is the whole of the universal consciousness and the whole of the divine feminine, the whole of the divine masculine. And so it's about how we express that and how we have experience of it. So the dropping into the heart, that's also why I recommend to people, I'm not saying they should or shouldn't, but recommend connecting with the soul consciousness of the earth, because this helps you in the understanding of all of these things, because she's our oldest, wisest living teacher. We are on her body 100% of the time, and she is unconditional, she is loving, she is profoundly aware of everything. And in that experience and that being with her, we begin to remember who we are, not who we think we are, but who we are and the divine spirit that runs in each and every single one of us. So it's a combination of things, but it's predominantly in my service to the earth and the different beings. I grow and understand more from direct experience.
And I know Kat has some questions she's dying to ask, but I've been waiting for this one since you first brought it up. So I'm going to jump in. And this is because Rev Ned talked about this last week. It's something that I have a deep connection to. And you were talking about the 4 directions and how they can help guide you through this process. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. On one level in my life, I very strongly identify with earth-based cultures and Native American teachings. And so the 4 directions are really valuable in the sense of understanding how the medicine wheel works and how energy moves around things. And so each cardinal point will have an energy manifestation. And when we sit in harmony with that, in the knowing that they are the manifestation of all things in the universe, we have that relationship. And it may be that we have the relationship with the animals that connect to that element, or the beings from other realms that connect to that element, the earth herself, the different beings in different aspects of the cosmos. So there's that understanding, and that runs through our bodies and it runs through our souls, and it's a really powerful way to connect with the elements. When I mentioned earlier about the manifestation of matter through those 4 elements, that has been really important for me in my life. And I do a lot of interactions with the land, and people may ask me to help clear their houses or their land or create sacred space. If I use my drum, the element of air always comes in, always. Doors will slam, things will move. And in each of the different elements, from my particular experience, it becomes like, it's not magical and it's not wizardry or witchery, but in cultures that work in those ways, people can become a master of an element. They can bring rain, they can stop rain, they can bring fires, they can stop fires, all that. So it's that element of the connection that we have with those. They run through us and they become a part of us, and people can feel them and people can experience them. And so in my experiences, there was this relationship that was from the past, which I kind of knew was there, but then it was like reactivated for this purpose in this lifetime. And it also was, I knew it was fundamentally about the afterlife and how we relate to matter, how we understand how things manifest and dissolve and devolve and evolve. And so through my working with the 4 directions and the medicine wheel and other cultures and the way that they interact with the 4 directions, I began to get a stronger understanding of that. And the ether is the 5th direction, if you like, which is where I was and where we all are in the Akashic Records and in that absolute connection to all that is. And then some years back, sorry, before I say that, so when I've looked into, and in the early days, I looked into different people's experiences in NDEs, and I also, as I said, I did a documentary for some people. I never came across the experiences that I've had that were mentioned in other people. There's always a flavor that's the same. There's always something fundamental, but it was a unique experience. And I was thinking, this is really important to me and I understand it. What do I do anything with it? Is it important in helping? And I was spending time with people who were dying and unwell, and that was helping. And then I never came across any of the flavor about the 4 directions or the 4 elements. And then I went to, and I've been to other Buddhist talks, and we go to different talks in our lives, don't we? And we have a listen. And so I'd been to those before, and I went to one, and one of the elders, I think he was in his 70s or 80s, was doing a talk, and it was being translated. And the focus of the talk was about death and dying. And in that talk, he was talking about how he had spent many years, as had his students, exploring how to navigate the afterlife after death. And everything he said was reminding me of what my experiences have been in the near death in relation to the 4 elements, and that how we dissolve matter consciously. So it can happen as a soul anyway, but if we're consciously returning back to the stars, and that's an aspect of having total soul recall, then in the dissolving of the matter, there will be mythical and archetypal resonances that show up in that process back. So, like, as I mentioned, people want to know about guides and healers and mermaids and fairies and stories of the mythological and archetypal references, because what runs through them are the different frequencies of existence within the stories when we get to an esoteric level. And so the element of air is contained within all the esoteric wisdom. It's contained within all the stories from different cultures. And when we're passing through back to the afterlife, if we haven't already done it in being a physical body and faced our fears and faced our compassions, or faced everything, in shamanic principles, part of the initiation process is you face your fears. And if snakes are your fear, then that's going to be something you're going to face. If the potential for death is your fear. And a lot of these near-death experiences are actually the equivalent of a shamanic initiation, because they activate, they do something. And so as you go through each element back to ether, you will experience these things. And the more consciously we can experience these things in the afterlife, so if we prepare for that, then we return back. In one of the cultures in Northwest America, they return back to Cygnus. And so not sickness, Cygnus. And so they teach people how to navigate the afterlife to return home to the stars. That's where that process of returning home to the stars is, so that we can either decide whether we're going to stay in the stars. In another way of saying that would be stay home with source and hang out for a longer period of time, or whether we become of a bodhisattvic nature, which is where we come back to ensure that all beings in all realms at the same time manifest enlightenment, or whether we choose to just come back for the joy of having an experience on planet Earth and meeting up with those loved ones in another incarnation, and our petty tyrants and all those things, in order to grow as a soul and have a human experience, because we're souls having a human experience for whatever that growth will teach us and share and what we can learn. And that's the fundamental of all of this. Is it's about being a soul, it's about the growth experience that we're having, and not to do it from a left brain point of view, but if we understand what's happening, we can learn and grow in different ways and achieve an understanding that we can't without it. Well, we can, because actually enlightenment happens in a moment. Once it's there, it's there. All the certainly in the east of the continent, enlightenment happens in a moment.
I want to hop in because we only got 20 minutes left. So my fantasy is I can ask 2 questions. I got a question from the audience, and then I have a question about mermaids because I do want to hear about mermaids because I love them too. And you can't go anywhere in Michelle's house without turning and seeing a mermaid. So, so we definitely want to hear about mermaids. So we had someone to ask. Crystal Chick asked about the 7 rays, and I think it's how do you know? How do you know what color is your color on the
Well,
7 rays?
sometimes that's about from your understanding, you begin to recognize things about a particular ray and the frequency of it that you have it. But you can just sit in your heart, commune with the earth, and ask these questions. If you have a guide or a healer that works with you, you can ask those questions. So next time they're either sitting on the earth or in nature or in a meditation, they can ask that question and find out what the answers are and pay attention to the answers. And the answers may not come by, you are of the purple ray. It may come by the next week you see purple everywhere, or you're drawn to purple food or purple clothes, or so it may not come in the way you think it's going to. So it's always about paying attention to the messages from the invisible world.
Cool. All right. I think that was very succinct because you put the power back in the hands of the person asking the question, which I think is genius. Because I'm also that way too, where I can get very left-brained and like want to look outside of me, and then it's much more experiential if you can find it within. It's much more validating, much more you feel it, it when it's your experience versus someone giving it to you. So let's talk about mermaids. What do you know about mermaids? What's your experience of mermaids? Mermaids. Go.
Okay, for me, I'm just going to give an experience of interactions with mermaids, because I think we've done the whole left brain stuff well and truly. One of the experiences I had, because they come in to work with me for, sometimes we work together to hold frequencies, sometimes they come in to share information, sometimes they just come in to play and have fun. There's all sorts of reasons. On this particular instance, I was in a place doing work in Malta, and I've mentioned this actually in the book about Malta that I wrote. So it's working with the earth energies and different frequencies, and the particular process in that was finding about the ancient origins of the human species again and the planet, and how we access total soul recall. And I went down to was walking down some cliffs to a particular place that's known as a grotto, and the intention was to sit quietly, be with whatever energies came forward, and have a communication with them. Now, I had also been esoterically pulled there. What I mean by that is like it was an impulse, intuitive, got to go there. So it wasn't something that I just thought, oh, I'm just going to go for a walk down to the grotto. It was actually an impulse to go there. And in the grotto, the tide was, it was late in the afternoon, and the tide was sort of moving and coming in a bit. And so I remember walking down thinking, well, I don't want to get flooded out and not be able to get back. So that was on my mind. Anyway, I sat on the rocks, was looking through the grotto and out to the ocean, and the water was starting to lap into the edge of the little grotto. So like I said, I was keeping an eye on it because I thought if this gets flooded, I'll have to hot-tail it. And first of all, I got a sense that there was a mermaid around. So what I mean by that is I had a feeling that there was some other being there. My body responded in a change of temperature. I had a sense of hearing someone speaking to me, so I could hear a voice speaking to me. And the energy changed. It lifted into a different frequency, and there was a feeling of someone arriving in order to communicate to me. And a mermaid appeared, and she had coppery reddish orange colored hair that was long and very curly. She had a blue top on, and she didn't have pale white skin. Her skin was pale, but I wouldn't call it white skin. It maybe had more of a bluey sheen to it, bluey creamy sheen. And she had blue scales in her tail, and she came up. She sat on the edge of the rock, and her tail was just lapping in the water. And she said, "Welcome. It's very nice to meet you. I'm glad you came today. And we love the work that you're doing with the divine feminine frequency. And we really appreciate how much you've been doing recently with this, that, and the other." There was a few things. And then she said, "Thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll see you again. And enjoy yourself. And you're welcome to do whatever you wish to do with our blessing at this point." And then the waves were coming in, and she said, "I need to go." And she dropped back into the water, and there was an eddy of like a spiral, and then a few bubbles, and she was gone.
So you didn't see her psychically, you saw her physically with your physical eyes. She physically showed up. It was not a psychic encounter, it was physical.
But it was both.
It was okay.
It's both, because most of them are both.
Well, you're talking telepathically, I imagine, but you're seeing her physically.
Yeah. So for me, it was definitely a combination of different ways of experiencing something, which we do all the time. Like I said to you in our conversation recently, you know, if you go to a party in a room or something, and you arrive in the party, and there's a room that you're in, and there's all that's happening there, and then there's people at the party and all that's happening for them, and then there's the furniture in the party and all that's happening for them, and then there's the food, and there's just layers and layers of everything. And so sometimes you're standing next to a person and you're not talking at all, but you can feel everything from them. Or you see somebody in the physical, but the communication you have with them is either more telepathic or more intuitive or more clairvoyant than it is physical. So, you know, you see somebody at a party and you think, "I don't want to talk to that person." You haven't had a conversation with them, you don't know anything, but on another frequency level, you've picked up everything about them, and you think, "I'm just going to steer clear of that person." And another person, you go, "I'm going to go there." So it's not just about whether it's telepathic or empathic or clever. It's all the different frequencies of who we are, all the layers of ourselves coming together, what that mermaid wanted to communicate to me about, what they thought was relevant to me, what I learned from the mermaid in relation. So it's many things that come together for a so-called sighting and an experience.
Oh, that's beautiful. We've got 10 minutes left. We're going to head into closing. Did you want to reflect on that, Michelle, since you are our resident mer girl?
I just
Well said. Well said. I think that says it all. In summation,
everybody give us your best mermaid.
I know,
They
that's
love
hysterical.
us so much. And that was so beautiful. Thank you.
That's great.
Oh, you can't let me out ever.
I have to learn better mermaid speak from you. When someone's might sound like someone's stuffing a cat, and I'm like, which I speak cat. So, well, so Miss Paulina, are there? Of course we have your links below. We have Miss Michelle's links below, Angela's, and you can connect through Linda through our Third Eye Salon links, because all these ladies do work. They're all servants of the divine, of the oneness. Paulina, did you have anything that you wanted to let us know about and invite us to coming up?
Sure. Well, I've got things that I've just done recently. So I've got a couple of things that are going to be put up on my Facebook pages of some recent talks I did. So that's one thing if people want to have a listen to them. I'm also putting a YouTube channel together, which means that stuff that a lot of the talks that I've done over the years, I have them on my website, and they're under either conferences and talks or cosmic conversations. So I've done a series of cosmic conversations. Particularly, they've chosen stuff that I think might be interesting. And I also have a Cosmic Conversations page. But so you can find things there that you can have a listen to. They're freebies. And in the YouTube, I'm going to put some of those up because not everyone accesses social media and Facebook. So it means that it makes it accessible to other people. And there'll be snippets and things that I'll be putting up in the next period of time. I will just say, if people are interested in learning more, there's also articles on my page that they can find and have a read. If they're interested in learning about Isis, where is it? Oh, it's not showing up. That's very interesting. Very interesting when you put a background on. So there we go, nearly there. How bizarre. Anyway, there's a book, and it's called Remembering Isis, Reconnecting the Divine Feminine. And that's about the consciousness work with the energies and temples at Malta, and other books on the go, and they're about different frequencies, because I think sometimes it's interesting to have a different experience of that. And then I do readings for people. So, like I have, no point showing them because they're not going to show up, but I have a set of cards that I make because I take a lot of photographs and I do paintings at different sites. And then I've made them into Soul Whispers cards so people can use them to connect in with the different frequencies on a more conscious but unconscious level, if that makes sense. So I haven't really talked about future events at this point. I used to do tours, but with the situation at the moment, without not being able to move in certain places, I'm currently working on a more online program for that. Like I've worked with teaching shamanic principles and things to people in online groups. So I'm going to start doing this at this point in time. So that's pretty much it. And theearthwhisperer.com is where you'll find me, and that connects into one of my other web pages under my name. So it's kind of currently all under one bundle. And yeah, I'm just looking forward also to seeing more of what you guys are doing. And if you do want to do any future conversations about specific things that won't get really heady, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, I think that kind of covers it.
That's great. Yeah, I think there's definitely so much more to talk to you about, and so I'm sure that will occur because I think people are really in the chat. You can tell people are really digging the conversation. So I'm going to flip it to what I call the Brady Bunch view, because it's time for us to say good night instead of good morning, good night. But Miss Linda, I'll toss the mic to you. Do you want to start our rollout here, our outro?
Yes, of course. I would love to. Thank you, everyone, for again being such a joy in the chat, and your energy is amazing. Thank you for being there with us. And for those who haven't, come to our Facebook group so that we can continue the conversation there. And thank you again for the coffees, and we will see you next time. And Kat, what's happening next time?
Yes, next week we have Jason Atkins. And so I just had my pre-show chat with Jason today. He is a gay psychic medium artist in Alabama, in Birmingham, Alabama. So I'm excited just because it's going to be fun to have another gay guy on the show, and to talk about what it is to be, just to be that in this community. I think it might be a little fun conversation. But he's an artist. What's going to be exciting for you is that he's an artist, and he's not just a psychic medium. He had that happening where he'd like be compelled to go up to somebody and be like, Roger, who's Roger? Oh, I got a message from Roger. So he had those experiences that were happening, but then beings started to appear to him, and it was basically the ETs, what we call ETs, but our Star Nation families, kin that are associated with different people. He would start to draw them and paint them, and he does it for a ridiculously low price because he's like, not well known yet. So, but he's going to be on sharing his experiences. So I'm super stoked for that. And then finally, we want to make sure that if you haven't already hit the like button, please do hit the like button, because it really helps us with our algorithms, because we don't do ads here, because we don't do ads. And then to just share the content and give us some comments below as you're watching it. Just let us know what you think. And if you're enjoying this, Paulina and her, I feel like we had a master class today. There's a lot to process after all of that that was shared today. And then, of course, I want to thank all of the lovely co-hosts, Linda, the lovely Michelle, the wonderful Angela, and again, Paulina. Thank you all so much for being exactly who you are in the oneness and bringing your oneness to this experience. So you can say goodbye now, everybody.
Bye now.
I was waiting to sing a song together or something.
See you next time.
I'm so glad we had this time together.
God, you're reading my mind.
We'll rehearse it next time. All right. All right. Bye, everyone. We love you.
Bye-bye.
All right. We are